Hey, everybody, I'm Kat Margulis, and I'm the host of The Power of Story. And as a longtime journalist, author, book coach, I tend to see story everywhere I go. But in recent years, I've had the chance to see how story can transform lives and businesses. And that's what I want to explore with you and my guests through this series so that you can create the life, the business, and the legacy of your dreams through storytelling. And I am so thrilled and honored to have with me today as my guest, Michael Hauge. Michael is a renowned Hollywood script consultant and story expert who offers business leaders, speakers, marketers, consultants, and entrepreneurs the secrets of Hollywood storytelling magic. He has consulted on projects starring Will Smith, Morgan Freeman, Julia Roberts, Tom Cruise, and I love Reese Witherspoon. And applying those same storytelling principles, Michael also coaches independent consultants, speakers, marketers, entrepreneurs, and business leaders on using story to transform the lives of their audiences, clients, and customers. Michael is the best-selling author of Selling Your Story in 60 Seconds, the guaranteed way to get your screenplay or novel read, as well as Storytelling Made Easy, persuade and transform your audiences, buyers, and clients simply, quickly, and profitably. Michael, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. It's an honor. It's a very special group you're gathering for this. So I'm very pleased to be one of them.
Thank you. Yeah, you're a treasure. I'm really excited to have you as part of this series. And yeah, I mean, gosh, you work in Hollywood. I mean, and we were just speaking with somebody today about the power of Hollywood and storytelling in Hollywood. Why are movies such a great example of storytelling? And what can we learn from the way that Hollywood tells stories?
Well, when you're talking about the sort of applying Hollywood principles to the business arena for all those categories you just mentioned, a few things you need to really recognize about Hollywood movies and stories in general. Number one, far and above everything else is, if you're telling a story, if it's on the stage, on the page, on Zoom, wherever, if you're telling a story, your primary objective must be to elicit emotion. You must create an emotional experience for the people hearing or seeing the story. And that's what movies must do, and that's what Hollywood movies do so well. They know, I wouldn't say rules, but they know the techniques and the principles of creating an emotional experience for an audience. And when I say Hollywood, I'm talking about feature films, but also TV and so on, because at the end of the day, the reason one movie makes a lot of money and the other movie doesn't is because the successful movies do a good job, or at least promise the emotional experience is going to be very heightened and very involving. And so when you're connecting with your audience, when you're trying to create that link between you and them and get them involved in your story so you can persuade them to take some action, the key is you must know how to go about making an emotional experience. And that's really why always civilization is like stories. It gives us the chance to experience life more broadly than we would otherwise. Through imagination, through hearing the story, we get to experience things through the consciousness of the hero of the story that we wouldn't otherwise get to have. And that changes us. That in Will Smith says, movies help us live better. It's like, this is how you can live a fuller, better, more moral, more satisfied, more thriving life, by following the models that the characters in the story show.
Mm-hmm. I really love that. Oh, it's so great. I just love how everybody has something specific that nobody else has said. It really gets me excited. So I really love how you're bringing forth emotion as a key piece of the storytelling. And so what creates emotion? Like, what are the ingredients or the tools, or like, how do we create that?
Well, there's a few essential components that every story must have. Within a story, the specific answer to how does a story heighten the emotion or elicit more emotion, it comes primarily out of the conflict that's in the story and the details of the story that allow us, first of all, to vividly imagine what your story is telling us. By you, I mean the storyteller, whatever you're telling us. We need to be able to imagine that, especially if you're telling from a stage on a page, because movies create a more vivid picture of it because they're on the screen. But even then, the emotion necessitates that we become the hero of the story in order to experience what's going on, because we're involved with story not because they're interesting. I mean, they can be fascinating, interesting, but interesting, you can make data, I suppose, sort of interesting, but they become emotional because we believe we're actually experiencing it while we're reading or hearing the story you're telling. So there's really a few essential things you have to have. The first is the story has to have a hero. The story must have a protagonist. Sometimes you can have more than one, but I don't recommend it too highly. Occasionally 2 works, multiple heroes in the business arena where it's a short story, usually that's more difficult. But you must have a hero, and we must empathize with that character. And empathy just means I feel what you feel. So you have to introduce that character in such a way that we feel sorry for her, or we worry about her, or we recognize her as a kind, good-hearted person, so we like her. And once that's established, now you've created this subconscious connection between the hero of the story and the person in your audience and your reader. That puts them inside the story. And then the next essential thing is that hero has to want something. There has to be a goal for that person. You want to avoid what I call the how I spent my summer vacation kind of story. And any of you watching this right now who've ever been to a conference where people got up on the stage and talked, I guarantee you've had that experience. It's like, oh my God, how long is this person going to go on? Why am I listening to this? Because it's like, well, here's Disneyland, and here's where we went on Magic Mountain, and here's whatever it might be. And so what you want is to give that hero that we're empathizing with a specific goal, because now we're rooting for the character and we have a finish line we want them to cross. And then in pursuing that goal, that's where you have to add the obstacles. That's where the conflict comes. That could be external, if it's a physical endurance kind of thing, or there are characters or people or society or forces of nature that are coming up against the character. But if you really want to go deep, what you want to dig into is what are the fears that are stopping that character from achieving what they want. And I don't know any successful story where you're talking about a movie, a TV episode, or any speech or presentation that can get by without those 4 things. A hero, empathy with the hero, a goal, and obstacles they have to overcome.
And now, great for the writers in our audience. How do you transpose that in the business space?
Yeah. I can answer that question. As luck would have it. That's one of the things I can answer. Here's the thing. When you are trying to persuade someone to take some action, which is pretty much the basis of almost every story you encounter in business, you may be trying to get them to hire you. You may be trying to get them to buy a product, or you may be wanting to change their lives by convincing them that taking a certain path of action, if they want to get in shape, taking this path to doing that. If they want to feel more fulfilled, they do these things. So you may not be after something personal like money or praise or whatever it might be, but you still are saying, here's how I see life. Here's how I recommend. I am trying to persuade you to take this action, because at the tail end of that, by taking that action, you're going to be more fulfilled, more successful, happier, whatever that goal might be. Okay, so that's what you want to have happen in response to your story. Okay, so the most powerful way you can do that, instead of getting up and saying, well, I know how you can make money. Here are all the investments I've made, or here's what where you should spend your money, or this is how the stock market works, or whatever. a much more powerful way is to tell a story about how you or a satisfied client or someone you worked with or whatever managed to achieve the goal and solve the problem that you're there promising your audience will be solved with your process. Because now, because they identify and empathize with the hero, you're actually giving them the emotional experience of following your process, following your advice, and winning. Because the story is going to be how that person or you managed to achieve the goal that matches something that your audience really wants. And now you've convinced them much more deeply and internally, subconsciously as well as consciously, oh yeah, this is the person I want to follow because I want to have the success that the hero of the story they just told has or have.
Why is story so important? Why is story so important for in communication, for business, or really whatever anybody is up to? Why is storytelling such an important or useful tool?
Well, at its very core, my belief is it's important, it's critical because it creates connection. It gives us a sense of our humanity, but it also creates not just a connection between the hero or the protagonist or the main character, the story and the audience, but between the storyteller and the audience. Because if you're trying to persuade somebody to do something, it's a lot harder to do that if they feel no emotional connection to you. If they don't feel like, yeah, this person is an expert, they get me. They've been where I've been, or they've helped other people who have been where I am, and they have a plan for doing this. And that connection that is created every time we watch at least good movies. Probably seen some movies where I don't care about any of these people. That's a bad movie. Then that movie provides a good, bad example because that movie didn't create empathy. That didn't create that emotional connection. But you need that connection before you can really elevate someone, before you can help someone live better, because they need to trust you. And they need to believe that you're someone who really is willing to help them, able to, and has a plan for doing so.
I love that.
Did that answer that?
Yes. And I just really love that before you can offer help, you have to create a relationship. Yeah. I love that. What are audiences and I guess maybe consumers too, what are they craving today?
Well, now I'm not as good at that. The answer is just very specific, or it's so broad it's hard to answer. But very specifically, I think what we all want is a greater feeling of fulfillment, connection, and achievement. We want those basic human needs, the Tony Robbins things we want. That's what they're after. We all are looking for ways to live, to thrive, to live a more fulfilling life, to be more successful, whatever you regard or whatever anyone regards as, this is what I want. This is how my life will be better. I'll be happier. I'll feel more connected. I'll be in a better relationship. I'll have better relationships. I'll be healthier. So the specifics, it's interesting. It's an interesting question because, as I said, I mean, pick any product on the market in the world, or any person who's giving advice on any stage or in any blog or on any book or whatever. And every one of those is designed or is trying to persuade somebody, this is going to make your life better. This is going to help you solve a problem that you don't need to know how to solve, or achieve a goal that has been eluding you, or that is a bigger pursuit than you've experienced before.
Yeah, story is the problem solver, virtual or otherwise.
I'm sorry, shouldn't
Yeah, go.
interrupt the interviewer, but the thing that makes that important, or the advice I have to everyone listening is, before you even start thinking about a story, let's say you're going to be on a podcast, or let's say you're going to be on the stage, or you're writing a book. The first question you have to ask yourself is, what is the problem people have that I'm here to solve?
Mm-hmm.
Someone I'm very close to was just at a conference, and she wasn't very happy about the conference, and she kept thinking, well, we kept asking ourselves, why are we here? Why are we doing these exercises? What is this? Because, apparently the organizers, or whoever it was, hadn't conveyed the definition or their goal for the thing. It was more like, well, let's all get together and hear people talk. I mean, or let's take what we're doing right now and this great thing you're doing. But it's very clear what the problem you want to solve for people. You want people to thrive by telling better stories and finding as many different ways from as many different ones of us that might have secrets or tricks or principles that we can follow, because I bet every guest you have is not going to disagree that stories create emotion, and the goal is some form of connection and persuasion. And so you're very specific. And when you gave that introduction to this program and to me, it was very clear. Oh, I get it. You're going to help me tell better stories. But so whatever your goal is, whatever you're offering, whatever you want to persuade somebody to do, figure out how is that going to help them solve a problem, and to figure out what is the problem they're coming to find out. And again, that's why you don't want to show slides of your summer vacation. Unless it's insomnia, that rarely solves anyone's problem,
Yeah. For the writers and novelists and aspiring screenwriters in our audience, what should they know that most writing courses won't teach them?
Yeah, that's it. Well, I haven't taken most writing courses. I'll switch that a bit. This is going to be like a press conference. I'll be like a politician. I'm going to answer the question I wish you.
I love it. My last guest did it. He turned the question around. I'm like, I love it when you guys do that. Even better.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're all teaching this, but I'll tell you some of the biggest mistakes writers make. And there's almost always no difference, because I work with screenwriters, filmmakers, producers, studios, and so on those stories with what I call professional storytellers, in the sense that they get paid directly for their story. If I write a good script, I'm going to get paid for the script. Those of you who are in business, rarely you're not going to make a dime from the story itself. The story is to help you persuade someone to do something or change their lives in a way that you'll get paid for that result. But regardless of which category you're in, the problems seem fairly consistent. Number one, and I encounter this more than anything in either arena that sabotages story, and that is they're way too complicated, just way too complicated. Stories are simple. I mean, if you can't define what your story's about in a single sentence, which I could do pretty much every successful Hollywood movie, at least box office success, because what is the first, if somebody recommends a movie, what is the first thing you're going to ask? Well, what's it about? Oh, it's about a guy who wants to stop a serial killer who's threatening, da 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 da. That, and I've just given the plot line for, dozens and dozens of movies, but it's that simple. And then when you know what that goal is, every single element of the story that you're telling either moves that hero closer to the goal, or it creates more obstacles to it. So meandering around, or there's this sort of motto, or this principle I encounter a lot, or my approach to it, and that is the big mistake a lot of storytellers make is they say to themselves, when in doubt, add plot. And that's not what you want to do. What if there's an answer to that, when in doubt, go deeper. In other words, when in doubt, you need to know your character better. You need to get down to the level of what drives them. Why are they doing this? What are they afraid of? How were they wounded in the past? What problems that they don't want to recognize or might be consciously unaware of are standing in their way? But saying, well, let's send them to Poughkeepsie, New York. That might add some scenery. Now, I'm being absurd. That's not necessarily going to, I'm nothing against Poughkeepsie. I've actually lived through there, but it's the stories are too complicated.
Yeah.
Next of all, a big mistake is in the business arena, especially, there is no relevance for my audience or my readership or my followers or my prospects to this story I'm telling. In other words, well, it might be interesting or might be fun, might even be somewhat emotional, but again, they're there to solve a problem. And so if it doesn't relate, if they can't feel like they're going to walk away from that with some kind of inspiration or knowledge or skill that they can then apply to pursuing their goals or solving their problems, then that's not going to work. And then we get to not quite as important, but really common is just the style, the way the story is told becomes weak. There's no dialogue to the story. There's not enough description to make it vivid. There's so much description, we get lost in it instead of keeping the story moving forward. But those aren't as important, I'm telling you, as have a clear goal and then don't complicate it with a lot of tangential material. Or, by the way, if you're telling a story, be very, very careful. Few people can do this well, but generally my suggestion is tell the story. Don't keep making asides, or don't tell the story and say, and the reason that's important is da, 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 da. Just tell the story. And the story will carry it. I preach the gospel of stories, so I figure pretty much anything can be done with a story, and then you can add the how-tos or the steps to follow afterwards. But first, you got to grab them.
I really love that line. I haven't heard that before, but I really love when in doubt, go deeper. That is really awesome. Really, really awesome. I love that. I think that applies to,
It's also what I love most about story. I mean, you know, people who hear me or I've worked with and so on. One of the things I think I talk about the character arc in stories, both in business and in Hollywood and so on. But it's that journey that the hero makes. I'm going to go on a tangent here. I want to be very clear. When I talk about a hero, all I mean is the main character. I don't mean someone who is heroic, because most characters, most heroes of stories are not heroic at the beginning. The story may be how they become heroic. That's part of the arc. But if you don't like hero because you're thinking of mythical or superheroes or something, just say protagonist or main character. Okay. But I completely forgot what I was at. I shouldn't.
I got so carried away. I'm like, let's just keep going.
What were you just asking? Or you said, I said,
I just love, the when in doubt, go deeper. That's just been my personal experience.
Right, about that inner journey. Yeah. So when I talk about the inner journey, I'm talking about the journey the hero takes from living in fear to living courageously. And here's why that's critical for successful movies. They don't all include this, by the way. It's not necessary. You can see some superhero stories, unless they're origin stories, they usually would have an arc, or just big action stuff where all the emotion is the visible conflict. But and the same in business. You can just say the character did this, this, and this. They overcame these external obstacles and they achieved the goal. And you too can be wealthy or healthy or whatever. That's okay. But when you're looking for that connection, the deepest connection is going to be when you get into that transformation from living in fear to living courageously, because then the topic of your story is not nearly as important. Because let's say your story is about how to make a better widget or whatever it is. Okay, most of the audience might be there to learn that, and some will more than others. But if you start talking about how the hero of the story faced the conflict that they were afraid of being too big for their britches. Their fear is bragging, of coming across as self-involved or self-aggrandized. We're afraid, in other words, some version of we're afraid that people will think we're acting superior. All of us have that experience at some time. Or the converse is we're just afraid we're not good enough to accomplish a goal and we're going to fall on our face and embarrass us. Because we've all had that experience. We've all felt both of those ways at different times. So there's no way that story that goes to that level is not going to connect in some way with your audience. If you tell the story in such a way that you really bring out that fear and then show how your hero found the courage to face that. One of the other little pithy things, I don't know if it's pithy, but I like to say is the hero, the thing that makes a hero of a story a hero, and the thing that will make you a hero is they stop asking the question, how can I not be afraid? And instead they ask the much more powerful question, which is, am I willing to be afraid? Because look at any hero of any story, they didn't stop being afraid and then go after it. They finally wanted the thing and were willing to give enough that they just didn't, it's not that they didn't care, they were scared to death, but they still went after it. You go to that level, you go into the story more deeply, as we were saying, then you're gonna knock it out of the park. You're gonna be in the top 10% of any storytellers you're gonna find at any conference, because they're not taking it to that deeper universal level.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm just like, I love that so much, because I've been hearing and I've been talking about transformation, and I've been hearing and I've been talking about what we want from stories, a change or the character changes, but I haven't heard it get as specific. And in my head, as you're talking, I'm actually going through a Rolodex or a catalog of movies and stories. And yes, it's the fear, going from the fear and then to the courageous. That's the it's a very specific change. It's a very specific transformation we all want. I love that.
Yeah, we do.
So cool. That's really cool. I really love that. Gosh, I guess I get to let you go shortly, because I feel like I could talk to you forever.
That's a dangerous thing to say, because as you may tell, as everyone may have discerned already, I can talk forever too about stories, not so much anything else. That's my one trick pony, is I know about story. But yeah, I'll stick around as long as you want to listen to.
Oh, I love it. That is so powerful, and that is so big, and that is so new and fresh for me. I'm going to leave the interview there, and I will just have to have you back on my show another time.
Sure,
oh, Michael, before we end this, is there anything that you want to share with the audience? Any last tips or advice, or anything else you want to speak to?
Yeah. Okay. A couple things. One is, there's another mistake that storytellers, or those of us in business, it also applies to people who want to be in Hollywood as well, but let's focus on business.
Yeah.
A major mistake is you're just not telling stories. And the reason you're not telling them may be, I don't know how to do this, or I'm just not a storyteller. That's your fear talking, by the way, but I won't go there with it. What I'm saying is, telling stories is something you've been doing your whole life. And yes, you can do it better. There are things that I and the other people that you're hearing speak during this event, but from the time your parents said, what'd you do in school today? Or you went and ran your friends because you're telling them about something that happened to you, you've been telling stories. All you need to do is learn the techniques or the process for coming up with a story that's going to be emotional and have that kind of impact, and then the steps you go through to do that. So don't scare yourself away from it. It's a learnable skill, and it's not something that's as foreign to you as you might think.
I love that. It's
And
a
then-
learnable skill. Love that.
And one of the things I was going to say, there's something that we're, making available to you. And before we tell you what that is, the one other thing that we haven't had time to go into now, or wouldn't, but is important as far as the actual process of laying out the story, is the story structure. And the structure it's also very simple. All structure or plot structure means is what happens and when does it happen. So in the book that you mentioned, Storytelling Made Easy, and when I make presentations, I talk about the 6 steps that you want to take the hero of the story through as they go from living in fear or being stuck to formulating a goal, overcoming the obstacles, and achieving and crossing that finish line. And those 6 steps, I created a chart. I'm kind of left brain, so I love charts, but I created a chart that shows each of the 6 steps. And then the chart designates what you want to do in each step, what you need to accomplish, and how they link up in order to maximize the emotional flow of the story. So we thought that would be something you would enjoy and be able to benefit from. So
yes, we have that. That's going to be
before, Kat,
it's going to be in the show notes. It's in an email, so you guys look it up. It'll be in the conjoined with this this interview. There's going to be a link to Michael's free 6-step success stories chart. I'm going to download it right after this.
You better.
So you guys keep an eye out for it.
You'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
It'll be of value. You'll enjoy it. And it's just one page. It's just a chart. It's not too complicated. It doesn't meander all over the place. It doesn't do those things I warned everybody about.
Love it. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for sharing this chart. So guys, that's going to be linked with the interview. Thank you for being here and sharing your time and space and knowledge and expertise with the audience today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. This was fun.
Yay!
But maybe I shouldn't even say that, because obviously I had a lot of fun because I did most of the talking and you asked great questions, but I love doing this. You're a great interviewer too.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
love you. We're going to do this again, Michael.
well, one of the things that makes you a great interviewer, I'll just say, and I've already been on, everybody, so I don't need to butter her up. I got on the gig. It's too late for her. I guess she could take this out if I say something offensive.
No.
But the thing that makes you a great interviewer is the questions are fine. Those were good questions, but your responses are great. It's so fun to be an interviewee and be able to talk and present this when your reaction is so genuine and so excited. I mean, obviously, and I'd be willing to bet when we get to see, or when I get to see all the other ones that everybody's seeing, it's the same way. Because it's like when you're in presence of someone who's passionate about what they're doing and just having fun, which is sort of my rule of life. It doesn't mean it's easy, but always go for the things that are fun, because those are the things that are going to help you thrive. So it's just great to have someone on the other side responding so positively and having so much fun as I am about story.
I swear to God, I'm having the time of my life doing this series. I'm like, I could do this all day, every day. I love it. So Thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for those of you watching at home. Remember, there's going to be a free Power Story workshop on October 24th. Details on that coming up. More amazing interviews on the way. And keep an eye out for Michael's free 6-step success stories chart, because I know it's going to be all gold up in there. So thanks, Michael, for being on the show.
Thank you again. And good luck to everybody. Keep telling stories, everybody. Just go out there and tell more great stories.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.